Recently, at the City University Graduate Center in New York, a diverse and multinational audience gathered for an important lecture and slideshow presentation by Aileen Agopian, an expert of Middle Eastern and North African contemporary art. The event opened with welcoming remarks by Karen Sander, the Director of Public Programming, who, after giving a brief history of the Graduate Center, invited Aileen Agopian to the podium. Titled Demystifying Middle Eastern Contemporary Art, the evening was sponsored by the Middle Eastern American Center. In her presentation, Aileen Agopian spoke about the path her life in arts has taken her, including early days of her career when, as a young student in London, she wrote a dissertation on Mona Hatoun, a Lebanese-Palestinian-born artist that set the course of her life. Agopian joined Sotheby's in 2011, conducting worldwide sales and overseeing charity auctions, including the record-breaking auction in Doha in the April of 2013. Before her work at Sotheby's, Agopian worked for the White Cube Gallery in London and Phillips, New York. She now heads her own art advising company, Agopian Inc. The main subject of her talk was about the current state of the market for Middle Eastern art that has been historically neglected and only in the past 2 decades has become more recognized thanks to the resurgence of the Middle Eastern art market in Dubai and other major cities in the Middle East. But as Agopian explained, despite this new interest towards the Middle Eastern artist, it is still a very small market compared to the market size of the European artist.
But the market for Middle Eastern art is still really minuscule compared to the market for Western modern and contemporary works of art. The record for a work by a Middle Eastern artist is $2.5 million. It was for an Egyptian painter, Mahmoud Said, a 1929 painting. And when you think about it and you compare this to the record for Western works, we're on a completely different playing field. The new record for a Western contemporary work was established last February in 2015. The Qatari royal family paid a reported $300 million for a Paul Gauguin painting from 1892 titled in English, "Will You Marry Me?" It has a Tahitian title. The record prior to that was established in 2011 for a monumental Paul Cézanne painting titled "The Card Players." And that sold for $250 million. And guess who the buyer was then? You got it, the Qatari royal family. When paintings of this astronomical value trade on the market, and the repeated buyers are from one of the smallest countries in the world, believe me, people start to take notice and the tides begin to shift even more. While the global contemporary art world I was part of, in our auctions, we were selling the artist Jeff Koons for over $20 million, Warhols for over $100 million, Giacometti's. Our competitors at Christie's were selling Picassos up to $150 million. The list goes on, multi-million, multi-million, multi-million. But the most expensive living Arab artist sold in one of my sales in Doha in 2013. It's a work by Shant Avedisian. He's an Egyptian Armenian artist, and this is a work called Icons of the Nile, and that sold for $1.5 million, which is quite a great sum. But as you see, there's obviously a huge disconnect going on between the Middle Eastern market and the international Western one.
Using an engaging slideshow, Aileen Agopian outlined several important contemporary and classic Middle Eastern artists that have had exhibitions in major U.S. museums and galleries, including an Iranian artist, Monir Shahrudi Farman Farmayan, Egyptian artist Wael Shawki, Lebanese contemporary medium artist Walid Rad. She also highlighted several Armenian artists whose work is attracting interest on the world art market.
In a region synonymous in popular imagination with political strife and perpetual uprising, in a region laced and fraught between conflict, between identity and cultural imposition, what I found the most interesting, and I still do, is that many of these artists, and the most significant ones, are women. But I want to first talk about Manal Al-Doyen. She's perhaps one of the most well-known contemporary Saudi artists. Manal's work draws its main inspiration from her own experience as a Saudi woman, questioning women's place and women's role in Saudi society through the power of cultural diplomacy in addressing politically sensitive issues. She's a photographer and a sculptor. The next Saudi artist is Abdul Nasser Hatem. He's an artist who spent over 20 years in the military in Saudi as a lieutenant colonel in the Royal Saudi Arabian Armed Forces. But he realized that art was his true calling, or is his true calling. He's another artist that makes very politically charged canvases and sculptures, using intricate geometric patterns, often covering his paintings with stamps, conveying images from Arab culture, which he intertwines with subtle messages about the way religion and authority are used to influence people. The next country I'm going to jump to is Iraq. This is one of my personal favorites as an artist and as a woman. Her name is Haik Kocharian. Haik's work, which you see here, grapples with the space between Western and Middle Eastern cultures, aesthetics, and concepts of gender through her personal history as an Iraqi immigrant to Europe and ultimately the United States. Ali Bani Sadr is from Iran. He now lives in New York. Again, one of my absolute favorite artists, someone whose work I'm completely committed to and a champion of. Ali's work is found hanging in the Met, the British Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Art in LA, the Albright Knox, the Francois Pinault collection. The list can keep going on and on. His paintings, for me, they transport you to another time. This artist, Hadar Sarkeesian, is from Syria, of Armenian descent. He is a brilliant photographer whose work tells stories that are not immediately visible to the surface. Focusing on photography as a means for documentary purposes, he shoots haunting and beautiful moments that are completely at odds with the socio-historical realities they conceal.
Following this engaging and informative lecture took place a conversation with Aileen Agopian, moderated by David Joslet, professor of art history at CUNY. Topics discussed range from the current world market for Middle Eastern art to collaboration between Middle Eastern countries and the world's top museums to the role of the female Muslim artist within their own society and the world at large.
I think many of these female artists are using it as their platform to really get their message across, to show, that yes, they come from regimes that there is not gender equality. There is, there are these bigger issues, and they're not afraid to challenge what I think we as an audience would think they would be a bit fearful to, challenge and take on these really big thematics in their work in such a public way. And someone like the artist I had shown, Manal Al-Doyan, who had the doves, she was even invited by the Clinton Library. She spoke with Bill Clinton in a big symposium about this whole message. And so for them, it is their platform to get to get the message out that yes, they come from these difficult regimes, but there's so much creative energy that they're not scared to challenge, they're not scared to expose, they're not scared to put themselves forward, and they do so with passion and vigor. And it's fascinating that across the board, not just Saudi, there's Iran, Syria, Lebanon. I mean, there are talented women that are also in Egypt that are showcased there. And if there are different issues, you know what? They work around it and they'll get their work shown somewhere else in Europe to really get the word out. So I think that, coming to it, that is not what I would have perceived, but being a part of it, I saw, these women are incredible.
In a following Q&A, Aileen Agopian answered many questions from the audience, including questions from young artists, professional art collectors, and art lovers alike. The lecture was an eye-opening experience for all who attended. As Aileen Agopian explained, the education, discussions, presentations, and raising questions are the best way to energize the art world towards the Middle East and its artists. While listening, Aileen Agopian spoke with such a deep knowledge, and following her very impressive career in the art world, it becomes certain that her new venture of running her own art consulting firm, Agopian Inc., is destined for success.
I'm so excited to have opened Agopian Inc. It's my own art advisory. For many, many years, I've been working with incredible collectors from all over the world, shaping their contemporary art collections. And they always say, okay, it's time, you have to leave, we have to work together and really build museum quality collections with lasting value. So after working in the industry for 20 years, from gallery to auction, I felt it was my time, and I'm working with a number of select top clients from around the world and building their collections with the vision to creating ones of legacy to be donated to different museums. I'm always looking at artists' painters, sculptors, video, photography. They could be cutting-edge new contemporary artists to post-war masters that you find on the walls of different museums. I think that's what makes a collection interesting, is to have that wonderful mix between the new talent and the root of these incredibly museum-talented artists that have been the predecessors and have influenced so much of these young artists. So it's really getting that balance right between the old and the new, and that's what makes a collection interesting. For me, it's very important for collections to have a great global dialogue. Artists from the US, artists from the Middle East, Armenian artists, Asian artists, Latin American artists, artists that I feel are challenging and exposing and are really making a difference in the contemporary art world and in art history. So these are artists that have been internationally shown. They're artists that are making a difference in the wider global dialogue, artists that I feel are very important to shape an art collection. I am going to be incredibly happy to have finally fulfilled my passion and my dream and built these really beautiful collections with a wonderful museum legacy, collections I'm proud of and the collectors are proud of as well.